Everyone loves a comeback story. And PBS is here to tell it. From behind the scenes,
you know what? We'll fight our way through it.
To a reimagined front row seat.
You want to do this?
PBS for the Arts is your ticket. And resilience takes center stage this season.
Working in this space, filming in this space, has been an enormous act of hope and of celebration of what has come and what will come.
The show will go on. PBS for the Arts.
Hi there, I'm Amy Shaw, President and CEO of Nine PBS. I am so excited to be with you tonight and thank you for joining us. What a great night. We're gonna look at the great series, The Black Church, which I'll tell you about in just a minute. And we're gonna get to hear some live gospel music. That is a big Sunday night. The Black Church, this is our story, this is our song, is from acclaimed executive producer, host, and writer Henry Louis Gates Jr. Henry Louis Gates Jr. is a very special friend of public media. His iconic program, Finding Your Roots, is the highest rated series on PBS. He is a great friend. And speaking of high ratings, 9 PBS is the most watched public television station in the country as a percentage of households viewing. And this is because of all of you, so thank you very much. As an organization, 9 PBS is dedicated to telling local stories through diverse voices, and we're committed to representation of our communities. And we have two powerful specials coming up on the Black American experience. On Tuesday at 9 p.m. is sadly the 1-year anniversary of George Floyd's murder. And Judy Woodruff and the entire PBS NewsHour reporters will present the special Race Matters America After George Floyd. And then on Memorial Day, May 31st, Tulsa, The Fire and the Forgotten examines one of the worst incidents of racial violence in the United States. It's the history of the 100th anniversary of the Tulsa massacre. These programs can be watched live on 9 PBS. They can be live streamed on any device or anytime at 9pbs.org, and they're free on the PBS video app. So I have the great pleasure of introducing my great colleague, 9 PBS senior producer, Ruth Ezell. Ruth's long form work of Black and Blue is a very special series. It's Of Black and Blue, The Journey of African American Police, and it tells a story here in St. Louis. You can watch it on 9pbs.org or on the PBS video app. And she and that program received an award for the Missouri Professional Communicators Group last year. And in 2019, Ruth was named by the Greater St. Louis Association of Black Journalists a living legend. So receiving the Living Legend Award, very deserving. And Ruth is going to interview such a great friend to 9 PBS, Brian Owens. He's a singer, a songwriter, a community activist, a media tycoon, and his work and perspective on the region's Black churches and their influence on gospel music is something you're going to hear about. But first, here is a clip from Hour 1 of the Black Church. This is our story. This is our song.
Good evening, everyone. I cannot think of a better, more enjoyable way to spend a Sunday evening. Thank you for being here. And I won't stand on too much ceremony. I want to get right to the discussion because we have a few things to unpack here. With us tonight is a gifted singer, songwriter, community activist, nonprofit executive, and a devout Christian who is using his enormous talent to transform the lives of young people in underserved communities. Brian Owens is the founder and executive director of Life Arts, Inc. Life stands for leadership, innovation, faith, and entrepreneurship. Now, I could go on and on about the impact that he has had on the St. Louis music scene and the impact he has had on the St. Louis area in general. But I'm too eager to speak to him because it has been so long since we have spoken, several years, I think 2012. So good evening, Brian. So good to see you.
How are you, Ruth?
Oh, doing good, doing great. And you are doing wonderfully. Your work is being recognized. You are winning awards, and it well-deserved too, I might add. I'd like to start, we're going to chat a little bit. I want to talk to you about your musical journey and where it began. Wasn't it in the church?
Yeah, I mean, like most, soul or R&B artists, especially Black artists, our journey typically begins in the church. Everybody in this room with me today, our journey began in the church, and it still exists in the church, by the way. And that's where I started. My dad was a preacher. I grew up singing mostly a cappella in church and hearing really great, amazing singers. And not just from a spiritual standpoint of them, sharing the gospel and the message of hope and hope of Christ in the music, but just the ingenious of their creativity vocally and different things like that. So I kind of got the best of all worlds in my experience and trying to pass that same thing on to my kids.
And are you still working actively as a music director in your church, or do you just have too much on your plate right now?
No, actually, I lead a house church. And a couple of my artists live on my block, so they come over on Sundays. We go through life together, every single day of the week. But most of the people who are, again, in this room with me serve in some capacity at one of the churches here in St. Louis. And there's a lot of gospel records that people out there have probably heard that has some of these people on it. So one of the things I really appreciate about the St. Louis scene in terms of gospel music is that it's kind of the best of both worlds, where people are home and they're active in their churches, but they're also making records and they're also touring. They're also being involved in things, outside of the church. So that's a pretty cool kind of best of all worlds that we get to experience here.
And I think it's kind of interesting the way that the worlds blend, the church with the secular, if you might say, the way the styles of gospel and popular just kind of, it makes this fabric that draws in a lot of people who might not otherwise ingest gospel, I think.
Well, I mean, when we say it's blended, it's kind of like we blended it. Like, I don't know, like a chord is a chord, and the feeling that people got when they listened to Otis Redding and Sam Cooke and Marvin Gaye, and even on the other side with Elvis Presley and Johnny Cash. I mean, I used to say that the one thing that I know for sure that Otis Redding, Marvin Gaye, Sam Cooke, Johnny Cash, and Elvis Presley had in common is they all grew up singing Old Rugged Cross. Every single one of them, regardless of the style, they all grew up in church on hymns, and most of them were just running away from preaching. That's what I heard. That's what people would say. Like most of them were just like running away from being preachers, right? And so I think it's very difficult, for many musicians, and in particular African-American musicians, to separate out our religious experience from what we call quote unquote secular experience. For me, I just have an experience. And so the experience that I have as a follower of Jesus comes out in whatever I do, wherever I do it. And so it's not like I'm, a lot of those kinds of labeling things came from the record industry,
That is true. And would you consider that bias though? The way they do that label music?
I mean, it's a way to sell it. I think, labels exist so that it makes it easier for people to, to kind of arrange it out to say that's this and that's this and that's this. And I definitely think within the church, traditionally you did have this thing with sacred and secular. And if you had a talent and a gift, it was supposed to be used only in the service of the Lord and only for the purposes of the church. I mean, even musicians like J.S. Bach, who is widely regarded as the greatest classical musician of all time, he only wrote for the church. He only wrote church music. But I think that, for musicians like us, and specifically like me, and like the gentleman who is providing the soundtrack for this evening, Donny Hathaway, there was really no separation, like, in terms of like the philosophy of how we view the music and its impact in our lives. So, I always tell people when they say, "Are you a Christian artist?" Like, I don't go up to somebody and say, "Well, are you a Christian lawyer? Are you a Christian doctor?" And I'm going to do something that I never thought I'd do in my life, and that is quote Kanye West.
Oh my goodness.
Kanye West was asked by, I think it was Jimmy Kimmel, when he was, the big thing about his conversion to Christianity, him becoming a Christian and being saved. And Jimmy Kimmel so asked him, "So now are you like a Christian artist?" And he said, "I'm a Christian everything." And I think, when we look at music, again, for me, that's kind of, my answer, and the role of the traditional Black church and its influence on all American music, irregardless of color. Like, you cannot get away from it. If there was no Black church experience, we would not have popular music. And I would say this, if there was not a church experience, period, you don't get people like a Johnny Cash, or you don't get, Elvis Presley, or you don't get Carl Perkins. So you don't get those kinds of people and that kind of music that had that kind of that depth to it outside of that experience. So, yeah.
So in short, would you say gospel music is the quintessential American music?
Shoot, yeah. And not only, I would say that Dvorak, who, widely regarded one of the greatest composers ever, in his New World Symphony, his whole thing was in the music of the Native American and the African American, you had a whole new music to be explored and discovered, looking at, Negro spirituals, which is the roots of gospel music, and later, jazz, blues, all these kinds of things, the African American people in this country manufacture culture, as my friend Brandon Williams once said. We manufacture culture, and we took what was given to us and we internalized it, and it came out in a very unique experience that can only be described as a Black American experience. So, and it's gone all around the world. People like Mahalia Jackson, who said, "I will only sing gospel music," and in certain places found herself on the stage, performing before people like Miles Davis and Sly and the Family Stones, and she's up there with just an organ and piano player, and people out in the audience losing their minds. And there's a story that she tells of somebody coming up to her, and they said, "Oh, Miss Jackson, when you sing, I can't explain it. I just feel something." She said, "Well, that's the spirit, child." And so whatever it is, there's something in this music. And I think it's because it's rooted in a very specific, unique experience. And it's hard to hide that. You can tell when somebody grew up singing in church or grew up playing in church. You can tell it. It's in there. It's in the fabric and the DNA of who we are.
Yeah, it's amazing. For those of you who've not seen the entire series, you can get it on 9 PBS Passport, because I learned things about Mahalia. I didn't realize just how much of an activist she was. And if I recall correctly, because I was alive at the time, when Martin Luther King gave his "I Have a Dream" speech in Washington, he had actually done it first in Detroit, which is my hometown. I remember that happening. And I believe it was her who prompted him in Washington, because he was going on and on. He had a prepared speech. And I think it was Mahalia Jackson who said, "Martin, talk about the dream." And the rest is history.
I mean, yeah. Well, even you talking about Martin Luther King and talking about the movements that happened in this country. I mean, the soundtrack of the civil rights music, while the music was adapted, was spirituals, hymns. And that was the ethos. That was the power behind it. Something transcendent, something greater than ourselves. I mean, that's what's gotten us through. You know what I'm saying? Void of the message in this music, because that's the most important thing for me. But then the carrying of the music in itself. I mean, bar of that, I mean, I don't know, even in my own life, how I would, navigate things. But God gave us music and gave us song for a reason. And I fully utilize it in my life, not just as an expression for people to experience, but just in listening in my own life.
Helps to deal with pain sometimes too.
It always helps to deal with. Sometimes you got to sing that stuff out. Yeah. Sometimes you got to play that stuff out, and it's a gift. And I think we forget that. We live in a society where music has widely become something that is strictly almost for entertainment and not for nourishment. And I think that we got to remember that, the beauty of music is that it's really intended for nourishment. And so we got to be careful what we put in, because you are what you eat. And for me, I want to be healthy, and just putting in stuff that really can feed my soul. And gospel music is certainly in that arena. And some of the stuff we're going to do tonight is it fits that. It speaks to trying times. It speaks to the weary soul, and it helps us have a viewpoint of something greater than this place.
I like the idea. Of course, mashups are very big now. And I've heard a few that started out with Gregorian chants. And I've been thinking to myself, what would it sound like to mash up a Gregorian chant with some gospel?
Are you
I think it could be done. I know they are very divergent styles.
Well, you can Jesus. I don't know what it sounds. Maybe okay. That's another one. So the next time we do something like this, it will be an entire episode completely dedicated to the gospel according to Gregorian chant.
I think it's worth a try. I mean, there's no such thing as failure, I think, when you try artistically, not just with music, but with anything, to just try something.
Why not?
Throw it out there.
What's the worst thing that can happen?
Exactly. Silence.
Right.
Which we can always fill with music. Yeah. So I think it would be a good time for a little joyful noise right now. We have a clip from hour 3 of the Black Church. And this talks, as we've been talking about, discusses the influence of gospel music in the civil rights movement. So let's take a look.
Yay, man, that was amazing. And yeah, civil rights movement, definitely the soundtrack of that was gospel music and hymns and spiritual songs, which was so dope to see. So I want to just introduce everybody to who's in the studio, and then 2 special guests that we have. They're going to be joining us for this next segment. So next to me, we have the musical diva extraordinaire, Miss Anita Jackson. On piano, we have Christopher Butch Woody. I said Butch.
Okay.
I said Butch. I got you. Enunciate, Brian. Enunciate. On drums, we got Rob Woody. On bass, we have Alvin Quinn. I'm going to Nova enunciate everything now. On organ, we have Thomas Payden.
Yes.
And I am Brian Owens. Yes. Lord, cleanse me. No, this is great. So we have 2 really special guests joining us right now, both from the St. Louis and East St. Louis areas, respectively, have gone on to do amazing things. And I'll let them tell you a little about the stuff they've been doing since they left this area. But when you want to talk about the influence of gospel music, and specifically musicians who come from this area, and the effect that we have when we take our gospel roots into the quote unquote secular sphere, I don't think there's 2 great examples in these 2 gentlemen. Please welcome to the call. We got Shedrick Mitchell, originally from Ferguson, Missouri, and Chuck Harmony from the East Side. How you guys doing?
What's up, buddy?
What's up, B? Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So I'm actually let me go to Shedrick first. So Shedrick, you know a lot of these cats in here, and as you know, fate would have it, you just put out an album where you pay homage via the organ to, what is your roots. So how would you explain really the effect that gospel music has had on you and all the success that you've had in your career with the people you played with?
Yeah, so again, my roots come, from out of St. Louis, playing gospel music and hearing, great musicians, like, the guy who I used to study with named L.G. Scott. My big brother, who's actually playing piano, had a profound influence on me in my development. Chris Woody, aka Butch, and of course, I would hear the Gospel Music Workshop of America, many different things that helped, that when I did transition to New York, that sound of St. Louis's gospel music was in my ear. And I still believe to this day, you know, it's definitely, I don't even want to say the undertone, it's an overtone. And, you know, in my music to this day, and jazz and everything else that I play. And, you know, I'm so thankful that, you know, the guys that you have playing who are, you know, who I certainly consider as my brothers are, you know, we kind of came up in the ranks together, you know, working out our music. And yeah, so, you know, I would still say to this day that the St. Louis sound had a profound impact on just, you know, my music. And, you know, so now today, here I am putting out a solo organ project. And, you know, just basically getting back to the roots of gospel music, just playing hymns, no overproduction, you know, just sitting down and just playing, you know, and just kind of flowing, you know, in the spirit, if you would, and just playing the things that I feel like kind of gospel music has gotten away from. And I just feel like, you know, at the end of the day, you know, we need to get back to some of those things. So, you know, just like some of the spiritual, so those things are not lost.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and just so, yeah. And I bought it, and I was telling Shedrick, I have a 12-year-old son, and last week I came upstairs and he was listening to the album while he was cleaning his room. So my 12-year-old son was listening to a gospel organ album, which just tells you how good it is. So like, definitely check out Shedrick and check out his music and go to his Bandcamp and support and do that. Before I go to Chuck, so who has had the benefit? What artists, if you don't mind, what artists have had the benefit of your giftedness?
I mean, just to go from a popular mainstream standpoint that people could readily identify with, Whitney Houston. I was with her for 9 years playing piano and organ. Aretha Franklin, you know, I was with Whitney up all the way until she passed away. Aretha Franklin, until she passed away, I was with her for several years. I'm still currently the music director for Maxwell. So those are people that, you know, maybe mainstream would know. But then, you know, you know, I'm still locally playing in my church. I've never, since I left my dad's church in '94, I never stopped playing in church. There's never been a break. So I don't care who I've been on tour with. When I came back home, I was in somebody's church on Sunday morning. And I think that has kept me, one, grounded. And then two, the other part of it is kept me connected to the music that, you know, I'm probably mostly identify with.
Man, I mean, could you have picked some people that we would have known? I mean, who Whitney Houston, Maxwell, who are they? No, man, that's amazing. That's amazing, man. So, and you played on some of my records, which I'm so grateful for.
Absolutely, my
so
bro.
Like, you lended your talents and gifts. So I'm like, yes, you gonna play on my record. So yeah. Okay, yeah.
It's funny, and if I could say this, Brian, my first record was, I believe I was 16 years old, and I believe that Rob and I played on this record. Rob, you remember we played on, I don't know if it was Rob's first record, but I know it definitely was mine. Wow. The O'Neill Twins. You remember that record, Rob?
Wow.
Yeah.
He said yes, sir. His mic not working.
Yeah. No, and I think the name of the record, it just came to me, it was called Another Chance.
Wow.
So, you know, I mean, those were the germs, and now, you know, I can humbly say I've played on over 200 records, you know, and, you know, at this point produced, I don't even know how many, of those records I probably produced, but, you know what I mean, at the end of the day, you know, I can always go back to my St. Louis roots for the start of, you know, of whatever, you know, my career has been blessed to be at this point, you know.
That's what's up, man. That's what's up, man. So Chuck.
What's up, man?
Chuck Harmony, man. So this is another brother that, you know, you can tell just the same thing, man. How did the experience of, you know, growing up in the Black church, and we actually grew up in church together for a while when we were younger. And then how, you know, just what you've gone on to do. Just talk about all that stuff, brother.
Well, you know, as you said, we grew up in the same kind of church, and what's funny is that my name is Harmony because of it, because we didn't have any musical instruments. All we had was voices.
Acapella.
That's where I really understood. That's where I learned music. It wasn't from instruments, even though my primary thing is piano playing and producing. I learned music from voices, you know what I'm saying? And so that really shaped how I understood music. And the other thing was that when I went to high school, I went to East St. Louis Lincoln Senior High School, and they had one of the most killer jazz bands in the country.
That's fast.
I got another side of music, you know, gospel music on one hand, jazz on the other. And that was the foundation of what I was able to adopt as my own musical perspective. And so I've been so blessed, man, since I left East St. Louis. I went to Alabama State, and then I went to Auburn University, and I went to Clark Atlanta University. And then I went on to start producing music and for a lot of different artists. Shout out to Shedrick, because I've been hearing his name and his organ forever, man. And I'm such a fan. It's cool to kind of put a name with a musical perspective. So shout out to you. But I've been able to do a lot of great things. But besides that, music has been the catalyst for me to see the world. And I think the power of that, the power of music to propel a young man, a poor young man at that, from East St. Louis to go all over the world, really free, because they were paying for me to go. But
the best way to go.
Right. For me to be able to do that, man, is such an honor. And it speaks to the power of music as a career. And it also speaks to the necessity for music, for people to be able to spread their wings in life and see different perspectives. And music is able to do that, and especially gospel music. I'll tell anybody, like I've been in the studio with some of the best singers of all times, really. You know what I'm saying? And the ones that really got it, we meet right at the church. You know what I'm saying? I'm playing some Total Praise, I'm playing some Amazing Grace, I'm playing some John P. Key to even start the session, no matter what we're about to do next. Like, it always start with our roots. It start with their love for a church piano player, knowing how to follow them. You know what I'm saying? They called me Church Boy Chuck my whole career. They just stopped calling me Church Boy Chuck, but it's because whatever singer from Jesse J to Fantasia to Jasmine Sullivan, whatever singer I'm in the studio with, we always meet at the church. You know what I'm saying? And that's how we get to those songs that people sing forever. You know what I'm saying?
Well, let me ask you this, Chuck, because I know that now, correct me if I'm wrong, weren't you like a producer with Neo for a long time?
I was.
So when you're producing for like Neo, and I think you won a Grammy for stuff you did with Fantasia, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I'm just saying all this stuff because he's humble, but I want any kids that are watching, or any people that are watching that think that like St. Louis is like, you know, we tend to take like a backseat view of ourselves. And it's like, no, like we make everybody's gumbo good. You know, like we go out and we can meld into anybody's gumbo and take it to another level. And I think that's what makes St. Louis musicians so special. But I'm gonna ask you this, Chuck, before we get to playing music in here. You know, when you were producing, you know, and you're doing stuff for Neo and Fantasia and Jesse J and all those folks, it started at the church. How did what you learned as a gospel and a jazz musician translate into what you were then giving them in the R&B, pop, and soul arena?
That's a good question. What I will say that I learned that has really propelled me in any room that I've been in musically was that gospel music teach you how to reach people emotions. It teach you how to get to the heart of the matter. You know what I'm saying? Like jazz and R&B and pop and all of those things is cute stuff. But gospel music teaches you how to get right to the heart of the thing. And so every time that I've needed to give a artist something that was meaningful, I was able to go back to what I learned. Even from the beginning, I'm not even talking about the new age gospel like Kirk Frank. I'm talking about Precious Lord.
Yeah.
Amazing Grace. I'm talking about You know what I'm saying? I'm talking about the real, that's how I learned how to get to the heart of the people, because when I was little and we were singing those things in 3 and 4 part harmony, I know what that felt like. I didn't even know what it was, but I know what it felt like. I tell anybody, you know what I'm saying? Like when I was matriculating through life, I've lived in a lot of different cities, and I probably joined like 12 or 13 churches, because the emotion, I feel it to this day when I get to the church house. You know what I'm saying? No matter where I come from, I feel that thing that propels me to want to be a better man. It propels me to want to walk a closer walk with God. And it starts with the music, man.
Woo! You know, we should play something.
Play something, man. I can't wait to hear you, man.
We got all these musicians here, man. So the soundtrack for tonight. So we're gonna jump to it. First of all, I appreciate y'all so much for jumping on tonight, man, because it's amazing to even know you, number one, but to know that you're still connected to not only this place, but to the message of that music, that our first love. Right? We're all still connected to our first love, which is the gospel and gospel music. But the soundtrack for tonight is from the man who I think is the quintessential carbon picture of what St. Louis soul and gospel music is, and that's Donny Hathaway. So we're gonna do some music tonight from the man who I would say heavily influenced a lot of people in this room and on this call. And just knowing and loving the fact that what you're about to hear is a quintessential representation of the effect of the Black church on gospel music in this city that touched the entire world. Let's do a little bit of that Trying Times, brother. Trying times is what the world's talking about. You got confusion all over the land. Listen, you got mother against daughter. You got father against son. You know the whole thing is getting out of hand. Maybe folks wouldn't have to suffer if there was more love for your brother in these trying times. Yeah, sing, sister. You got the riots in the ghetto. It's all around. A whole lot of things that's wrong. It's going down, yes it is. I can't understand it from my point of view, 'cause I think you should do unto others the way you have them do unto you. Yeah. Maybe folks wouldn't have to suffer if there would be more love for your brother. But these are trying times. Yes, they are. Oh, I said that. The Lord is talking about humanity to man. But what is he trying to do? Make this a better land. If you just read your paper, turn on your TV, yeah, you'll see folks demonstrating still about equality. Hey, maybe folks wouldn't have to suffer if you showed gonna do another one. This is Donnie did it on his live record, and he said something I thought was so cool. He said, I wrote this song about 3 weeks ago.
Sing, Brian.
He said, I wrote it to my creator, because sometimes I just like to tell him. Yeah, y'all better go back there. Donnie said that. There's no one else to turn to. But you, yeah. You're the only answer to the situation that we've gotten ourselves into. So, Master, would you please come down and give us a helping hand? 'Cause we need you. I know that's right. Lord, we need you right now. There's a lot of people going hungry. They ain't got no food to eat, nothing to eat, nothing to eat. There's a lot of people going naked. They ain't even got clothes on their feet. So, Master, won't you please come down and give us a helping hand? Oh, we need you. Lord, we need you right now. This one of them Hellier songs. Donnie and Roberta did this one. Come, ye disconsolate, wherever the mercy seat. Ruth, you better jump back in here before we start having church up in.
I want you to stay. Keep going, please.
Yeah. We got one more we gonna do. But we gotta talk first, don't we?
No. Believe me, I think our audience would rather hear you. So, in all fairness, I want to thank our audience. I want to thank you and all our musical contributors to this evening. You have made my week. And I think the best way to end this is for you to just take it out.
Okay. Go ahead and hit that Put Your Hand. This is one of my favorite Donny Hathaway songs. It goes like this. If you're at home, you're gonna have to get up and dance. Get up and come around in this. Put your hand in the hand of the man who's still the water. Put your hand in the hand of the man who calmed the sea. Take a look at yourself
Galilee. Put your hand in the hand of the man who steals the water. Put your hand in his hand who calmed the sea. Oh, take a look at yourself. You'll see others differently. Hey, put your hand in the hand of a man from Galilee. Mama taught me how to pray. For I reach the age of 7. And I'm down on my knees. I'm close to heaven. My daddy lived his life with 3 kids and a wife. And you gotta do what you gotta do. But he showed me enough of what it takes to see me through. Oh, put your hand in the hand of a man. Still the water. Put your hand in the hand of the man. Calm the sea. Take a look at yourself. Yeah, yeah. You can look at others differently. Put your hand in the hand of a man. Put your hand in the hand of the man. Still the water. Put your hand in the hand of the man. Yeah. Look at yourself and you'll see others differently. Put your hand in the hand of the man. We hope y'all had a good time tonight. When it gets tough, when it gets rough, when life seems that it's got you there, just bow your head and reach up, and I assure you that the Lord will be around. So as you go on tonight, and for the rest of your life, just remember one thing, girl and me. Put your hand in the hand. Put your hand in the hand. Good night, y'all.